to be introducing Elizabeth Alexander and Bill T. Jones. Those of us who live in New Haven are lucky to count the poet and professor Elizabeth Alexander as one of our neighbors. To the rest of the world, Elizabeth is familiar because she read an original poem at the inauguration of President Barack Obama in 2009. We celebrate Elizabeth as a student of life, of language, a Pulitzer Prize-nominated poet, and a scholar of African American experience, as well as the human experience of our time. The chance to hear Elizabeth in conversation about being an artist, about reflecting on our times, our history, and how it relates to her poetry, and about her commitment to reflecting African American life at the core of our American story, is one of the fundamental joys of the festival. Like Elizabeth, Bill T. Jones is an artist whose work both contemplates and transcends the times in which we live. Elizabeth's vehicle is language, and Bill's is the body, movement, and human beings in time and space. Bill T. Jones was here in New Haven for the very first year of Arts and Ideas. In 1996, it's been 15 years. And his company will be with us in New Haven at next year's festival in 2011. Last year, he received an honorary doctorate from Yale University. 3 nights ago, his musical, Fela, was recognized with 3 Tony Awards, including Best Choreography. Bill's artistic creations join startling beauty with an embrace of politics, power, and history. And this year alone, Bill has brought the story and vision of a Nigerian activist and musician to Broadway, and has brought the legacy and struggles of our great President Abraham Lincoln to the stages around the world and the United States. Thank you both very much for joining us at the festival, and I believe they're coming in.
I'll start by saying this is very exciting for me. This is a real treat and an honor. And we started our conversation a little bit earlier and found that there was more and more and more to talk about. So I think that in our time, isolating our zones will be our only challenge. And so after we talk for a while and I have some questions to get us started, then we will turn to your questions and comments. And so I wanted to start in thinking about all of the different kinds of projects that you have going at this moment, and ask you something about your working life. How all of the pieces of, being not only the choreographer, for which you were so honored for Fela, but also the co-writer and the director of this Broadway play. In February, your Lincoln show with your company went up. You've just told me about coming back from Israel with the company. There are all of these pieces and kinds of creativities with very specific challenges going on seemingly at the same time in your life. So I wonder how it is that you approach all of these different kinds of projects and their demands.
Well, I suppose that's when in a scattershot state of mind is actually an advantage. And the good luck of having, over the years, amassed a community of people. There is Bill T. Jones Organizing Dance Company, which was founded by myself and my deceased partner, Arnie Zane. He died in 1988. That company now is really building an infrastructure that's very healthy, starting with my associate director, Janet Long. The first associate director, artistic director I've had since Arnie Zane died. Janet came to me as a dancer from the Berlin Opera Ballet. Wonderful mind for the things that I love, and contemporary dance, and just in general interested in the questions that I'm interested in. She is one way that I'm able to be here right now. The company, I think, performed last night in Ravenna. Is that right, Jorn? They are traveling, I think, today, and I've been back for the Tony Awards. I left them in Venice. We had a premiere. I was there for the first night. But Janet is my rock. She knows everybody's part on stage. She is a person who can calm me down, and I get crazy in rehearsals. I can turn to her and I just ask her opinion, and I trust her opinion. So that's one thing. Now, with that, there is this administration and many, many wonderful people, board of directors, who are really keeping their eye on this company moving forward. Then there are something like Fela, for instance. I have there a long-term relationship with Jim Lewis, who I met when I was directing Derek Walcott's Dream on Monkey Mountain at the Guthrie Theater in 1994. Jim and I have continued to look for projects since that time. Fela was sort of handed to me by our lead producer, Steve Hindell, and I brought Jim in. Jim really completes a conversation. I'm a good one at really talking and actually somewhere is using people as a sounding board. And it's good to have someone like Jim around who actually catches important things, writes them down, and then we can talk further. And that's what co-writing is. Nigel Smith, really bright and gifted young director who is a graduate of Dartmouth, has been doing his own work now in New York. He knows how to really work in the theater world in a way that I'm just learning, because I come from the dance world. So he knows the right things, the right questions to ask of actors. He knows how to deal with the unions, all of that, which is a very big one. Those of you who work in the theater, you know that. And then Maya Garcia, who was a dancer in my company for a while, who I saw that she had interest and understanding of Yoruba culture, and she's a Cubano. So there was a kind of a feeling of I could trust her, and she sometimes will make movements, and I'll say, yes, can we turn that around, and what have you. And she has a great relationship with the cast there. She is that kind of like can-do kind of woman. So that's one way that I'm able to do so many projects. Arnie Zane and I we come from the counterculture. I don't know what that means to you, but the counterculture used to mean that nothing is as important as our freedom. Isn't that a lovely, quaint idea? Yeah. Lest we be too cynical, but it is a quaint idea. And so all the young folks in the room, make me a liar about that. Be free until the very end, right? And don't die. That's the other part. You have as much freedom as you're willing to pay for, and oftentimes the price is death. That's okay. It depends on your religious belief, right? We can get into all of that. So the freedom for Arnie and I was a big thing. I remember we had our first grant. It was they're coming down from the government. There was something called an advancement grant. That's right. An advancement grant. And it was they called it a pre-challenge grant. Pre-challenge grant. So it was $75,000, which seemed like so much. You had to do a 5-year plan, and you have to think about institutionalization, which was a curse word for us. Institutionalization, like what is that? Well, the fact is, with time, it seems that if you're around long enough, you have to build an infrastructure, you have to build a support system, you have to be willing to talk in forums like this. You have to be interested in things other than being in the studio. And that has made all of this make sense. Because I had to be questioned about what does it mean to grow.
Interesting.
What does growing mean? that is not about calcification, but about something following its, should I say, preordained path? What is growing? And I think that's what I'm understanding right now with all of these various projects.
I noticed when you won this most recent Tony, of course there was one for Spring Awakening before, but you said to the audience and to the dancers, "I'll be there soon, I'm coming," you know, something like that. Shout out to the dancers. But I took that to wonder if the company is your kind of real ballast or artistic home. Is that sort of, for me, I write different kinds of things, I teach, but poetry is home.
Yes.
That's what I have to come back to. So I didn't know if that was how you felt about what you do with the company, or if things are a little bit more...
Well, on a good day, when I'm not angry at the dance world, I say yes. And I am often angry at it. I like to be considered an artist first. We were talking about, am I a black man or an artist first? Well, I think I'm definitely an artist first, even before a choreographer. And that means that artists, in a post-Joseph Beuys kind of way, do I dare say this, artists make things. And you know, those of you in the visual arts world, you know that was a big, complicated issue about objects. And in fact, was the highest art actually free of objecthood? Well, okay, now I make a kind of ephemeral event, but it has a kind of, we strive for, not objecthood, but we strive for it to have holding power. I can I can pick up your book, and I can go through and I can read a poem. Now, the best I can do is get you in the theater and maybe have a good video representation made of what I've done on stage, but it's not that. It's a different thing. So we live in this very uncomfortable feeling of it all, just as you, quote, touch it, it dissolves. So that is something I am trying to understand, to make my peace with that. Dance is a central language, it's true. On the way over here today, there are projects. It's like maybe 4 or 5 projects that I'm with my companion, with my agent from CAA, vetting what next. And George C. Wolfe told me some years back, he said, you know, man, you got to do something elemental. He said, like and I never followed it, a Spanish morality play. Any Spanish morality play experts in the room? But I think I know what he meant. And what we were over today, I have a meeting tomorrow. I guess it's not, it's just a meeting with Berry Gordy, you know, Motown. And there's been a work for a while. He wants to do something with his life and with his catalog, which is a pretty amazing catalog. Yeah. Now, I saw the treatment today, only in the car on the way here, because it was, you know, email glitch or what have you. And it's very detailed. The story and these characters and da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And now I claim to be making theater, but I always want to actually do something that does not have to do, now we're going to do a scene. You and I are going to do a scene, and you're Dinah Ross, and I'm Barry, and now we're falling in love, you know? I'm not really interested in that. No, but, okay, what does it mean to tell a story then? What is the story? Well, I want to tell a story through pictures. I want to tell it through the juxtaposition of things. I want to not tell certain things and let the audience fill them in. You know, I say that my sensibility is a bit like a Rauschenberg combine. Something, go to like, let's say 1968, what he might have been doing, you know. You all know his work, of course, right? You know, the goat with the tire on the middle? When I talk to people who are in the theater world and they want to know what do I think I'm doing, I say I love literature, I really do. I'm reading a lot of things at one time. My favorite thing to do is actually I like to go to movies very much. I like stories. But in my own artistic imagination, maybe it's that scattershot mind, I want to put together things, friend of mine said, you know, I don't do, he saw what I'm doing is colliding things, or what's the new hip terminology, probably not so new anymore, mashups?
Oh, yeah.
You know, a mashup. That is true to me. So one thing about Fela was that nothing had been done. There was this amazing discography. There was this amazing story that not a lot of people really knew the story. We could do what we wanted to do with it, to a point. We had to educate. We had to motivate an audience to care about him. And then we had to make up things, a little bit to change the words so that they could speak to an audience. Now, we all sort of, we all know, everyone in the room seemed to know Motown. Mm-hmm. Is there any room for me to get in there and do a combine? And what's more, is that what they really want in the world that I think that the work is destined for? Mm-hmm. These are questions right now that I'm wrestling with. So, is that dance? I say it's art. Movement will be there. Mm-hmm. Movement will always be there. Even the freedom of time and space and gesture. You know that was it the famous when actors ask, "What is my motivation?" Right? Dancers, wonderfully enough, they never ask, "What is my motivation?" Now, maybe that's why we're less popular than actors. But why are you over here doing that? You know, why are you doing that? You know, we don't need to know why.
Maybe only the body needs to know, right? I mean,
well, the body knows,
yeah. Articulate way,
yes.
But where it comes from?
That's true. But if you're ambitious like I am, you want a large, varied audience, I think you have to know a bit more about what they want. And that's another thing of the classic avant-garde. Counterculture was one thing, dropping acid at Woodstock at age 17 in 1969. But then, fast forward 6, 7 years, and suddenly now you're defined as an artist. And an art is about this great adventure of free association and expression. Right? It was quite self-involved. And then it's worse, very self-indulgent. But we look through the history books. I'm sure in this venerable building you'd find a lot of self-involvement on the walls. And some of it, and some of it is actually effective, right? That's okay. I mean, artists are not saints. I don't think they actually make the best parents even, but they, no offense to the good parents in the world, you know, it's my feeling that artists that's part of the job description, self-involvement, because you're mining those regions, right? So, that is what I'm trying to understand right now is what is the correct balance of that kind of line, that abyss that opens up inside of us and we dive into it. Hopefully we don't drown. We can climb out with something that's beautiful. Mm-hmm. That is the art making at its purest. Or as Robert Irwin, the visual artist, talks about pure inquiry, all these great ideas. And then there's something called showmanship. And I'm a performing artist. We depend on butts and seats. Right. And butts and seats, there's a good deal of, I mean, I'm sure you're all so sophisticated, you don't respond to advertising. Right? You just read what's being on and you decide I'm going there. Nobody has to seduce you into choosing between Toy Story 3 and Hamlet, right? Nice laugh, right? Nice laugh, right? That's the dance I'm doing right now. Mm-hmm. And you asked.
Are we back at Motown?
No, just in general. Mm-hmm. Everything, right now, every choice being with the company or for the commercial theater. Where is that engagement? Yeah. On which the poetry comes? And then, how is it positioned to find an audience? I don't have to worry about that up front, but you soon have to worry about it. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking also about the ephemeralness of dance, distinguishing it from the other arts, and what a powerful thing that is.
Yeah.
I love the way, I was rereading Last Night on Earth, which is a book that I love, and at the end you talk about that, you know, about it's evanescent, it's gone,
Yes.
it's over. It's finished. It's not there anymore. And that made me think of the first dance of yours. So we were trying to place, it wasn't the Terrace Theater at the Kennedy Center in the early 80s, but it was in the early 1980s when I first saw your work. And the dance of yours that maybe I still love the most is D-Man in the Waters. Though I know that that's later, that's 1989. And what I remember so much is at the end of it, that here is this dance of exaltation in the midst of the ravages. And that at the end, as I recall, Damien Aquavella is held high and then the lights go out.
Actually, Arthur Aviles.
There's Arthur Aviles.
Yes.
And then, again, what I remember is that the lights come back on and everything's gone.
Well, then we take bows. That was very, I think we left the stage and then we came back on, right? I see. I didn't remember that.
So that's how I remember it. So it seemed to me that just that kind of, vanishing is such an extraordinary power that dance alone has. Even though, as you can see, at least for me, it lingers for many, many years to follow. So I would just wanted to talk more about that.
Well, dance is a movement of people and things in space and time. Choreography is the organization and generation of dance materials. So dance can be almost anything. You know, we can think about the dance of the molecules, and we think of on the quantum level, we think of the large bodies of the universe. That's all it's all true. It is watching clouds on your back, lying on the back and looking at clouds. It's a type of performance. Depends on how we frame it, correct? So I don't know. I think that there is something that I'm also battling with right now, is this feeling that people have of dance that is, Martha Graham calls dancers the acrobats of God, right? That sounds great, doesn't it? Acrobats of God, right? Or are they these, as Merce Cunningham says, they're men and women performing tasks. You know, that's one way of thinking about it. So, D-Man the Waters was a work that excelled because it had a good structure. It was with really interesting music and a cast that was sort of motivated. Works like Fondly, works that are oftentimes more problematic for pure dance lovers because they actually contradict what we really want dance to do. You know, we don't want a commentary. We don't want to do what theater wants you to do. Well, now, God knows, I don't claim to say what theater wants you to do, but theater is supposed to succeed on an intellectual level, they say, right? And read verbal level. Something is being done that can be described. Dance wants to be freer than that, but it doesn't have to be. A lot of Western theatrical dance is storytelling. The story ballet is the thing, in fact, that I think George Balanchine was really railing against. The abstract ballet came out of this desire to have the same freedom as his modernist peers would have embraced in the late 20s, 30s. You know, that was the idea. Now, how do you do at once this sort of postmodern, hyper-conscious thing that I was always doing, which was to try to do one thing and say another thing. Literally say it, which is already a transgression. Why? The dance is supposed to be free of language. Well, I say, I never said that I'm trying to make a pure dance. I said that I'm trying to make an experience where 1 + 1 = 3. And that is, isn't that what most artists are trying to do? Yeah? So dancing, speaking and dancing, all those other things actually were supposed to be testing the basic proposition around movement. What does it mean? What defies meaning? Language is, I'm talking to a poet, I was going to say language is tangible. It's tangible, right?
It is.
Even though sometimes when I'm reading poetry, I think, I read this, I said, what the hell did she just say? You know? And I read it again and again, and it's only when I'm able to just take what I can get, one word, 3 lines down, another word, that I begin to get the whiff of what she might intend.
That makes you an ideal reader.
Really?
Yes, I mean, because I think that, poetry is not the newspaper, and though there is often content in it, that's not what you go to it for. So hopefully it can be apprehended at all of those different levels. And if you come away with some information or some piece of a story or even a whole story in narrative poetry, that's wonderful. But there also has to be both, I think, a musical experience and a piecemeal experience.
And when you say musical, what do you mean?
Well, that it aspires to the condition of music. That if it doesn't have its own movement and its own flow of some kind, even if it's a jagged flow, right? If it hasn't risen above the level of absolutely plain speech, then it hasn't become something more. It hasn't gone up a level. But I think that in a way, that kind of piecemeal appreciation of what there is in poems is how they get made, too. The inverse of it is you start with an image or a word, or a something that you're obsessed with, or a stone in your shoe, and then from that comes the larger thing.
Well, that's exactly the way I feel about a work like we premiered this weekend in Venice. I took Serenade, the Proposition, which is one of 2 Lincoln works, a work with a beautiful design by Bjorn Ameland, who is my creative director of my company and my companion, with neoclassical columns, a white floor, and really beautiful lighting design by Robert Wurzel. And a lovely movement that was made, I call it interesting movement that was made collaboratively with the company. Imagine if I cleared this room out and I took 10 people and put them in that corner. It would be kind of a trip. And then they all had to move across the stage on a diagonal, right? And they do that. It would be quite a trip. Imagine open the chairs. It would be interesting. And now they've got to, while they're doing that same pattern that they started improvisationally, they've now got to stop someone 3 times on the way across. The dynamic begins to change. There's an interaction. Now, that was all improvisation. Can you remember it? Go back to the top, and now we are going to set it. It was an arduous process, but it made something that had a strange kind of loose, explosive quality, but it was obviously set. But it would be, in the context of a piece about Lincoln and the Civil War, it's very easy to read into it that it's sort of an analogy to war. Well, what happens when you take away the references to Lincoln? You take away a Dixie, you take away the costumes, which were deconstructed in 19th century clothes. And there's this series of movements, and there's these relationships which are very, very potent. So what I did was, quoting Jasper Johns, another favorite of mine, who said, in talking about how he worked, do something. Now do something to it. Now do something else to it. Which sounds so, mind-numbingly simple, but it's really, really where it's all at.
Yes.
So that's what that piece was. Except it was no longer in the United States. There was no longer any translations about the language. There was a little language in it. And now it's in the Arsenale, a 16th century miracle of warehouse complex made originally for building sails and ropes. In Venice. It's really quite amazing. And we were able to, there's a theater in there. We were able to, Bjorn designed this fantastic ramp that literally goes 60, 70 feet into another room through these arches that you've lighted, so the dancers come from very far. This whole stage, which was made this way, is now turned this way. So there's a center line. The center line had been there. Now, that was absolutely engaging for me. It was taking something I thought I knew, and now just spinning it, doing it differently. Where is its meaning? There was a meaning. There was a meaning. Could I have told you up front what it was going to be? No, I wouldn't have wanted to. So I need an audience, like you said, an ideal reader is for poetry. I need an audience that's going to relax and not ask why someone is singing Red River Valley in the background, why these people are looping and holding each other in that way. And I was very moved because people were moved. And I realized that my own feelings about Venice, this whole beautiful thing that mankind has made, is actually being reclaimed by the ocean.
Yes.
That a lot of my relationships to everything right now are all in question. A lot of images of things leaving. Well, I heard yesterday that you were leaving. I shall miss your bright eyes and sweet smile on the banks of the Red River Valley. So that kind of silly little sentimental song in this grand city of Venice, which in some ways, in the great ocean of time and space that is reality, is actually, even though we don't know it, it's already moving away from us. So that song, these movements, suddenly something else happened that I couldn't have predicted. I like that.
Yeah.
I like that.
And with that very American material,
Yes.
we're speaking earlier about your being such an Americanist in the work that you make, but
How do you use that? It's a lovely term, Americanist.
Yeah.
Like an American. It's an Americanist.
It's a trade here.
Yeah, I really.
Yeah, well, I mean, to me, you know, this is a really fascinating country, and this is a really complicated country, and a really contradictory country, and a babble sometimes, and an infinitely explorable country, and a still new country. So I think that all of that spirit is what I mean when I say Americanist, but also I mean taking the stuff of America and understanding it as infinite and universal. And you know, to a lesser extent, I mean also that you do engage American history in particular ways at particular moments. You know, the Uncle Tom's Cabin piece or the Lincoln piece. There we are in a particular place and time on the American historical timeline. But, right, so much is happening, and it's not your high school history text by a long shot. So that's what I mean by an Americanist. I guess finding an infinite and surprising fascination with the stuff of this country.
You know, there's echoes in your response, and I thank you for that. I was the Montgomery Fellow up at Dartmouth a few months ago. We had a wonderful experience. And one day, the faculty and I, we had lunch together. And there's this question of patrimony came up. Something that I learned, I guess I knew the word. It was only when I was sitting with my companion, who is European. I actually born in the Middle East, but actually his mother is French and so on. And his mother, Dora, who I love, a Jewish woman, survived World War II, and they speak with such love of the patrimony of France. Now, and patrimony, as I understood it, was things like their monuments, things like the incredible literary outpouring, things like, I suppose, even what came out of the French Revolution, the political order and so on. And so we started this thing with this, what is American patrimony? We tried to make a list. What is the patrimony? Is it Washington, D.C. and its monuments? Is it, then a lot of negative things came up. And of course, someone said, well, you know, marketing is American. You know, well, that's part of our patrimony. Right now, I'm working on Broadway, and I love them, but you know, I got 3 calls from family members today. My older brother was weeping. Man, You don't know what it's like to be watching the television and you see somebody and it's your blood. You know, watching television and you see somebody and you realize it's your blood. Now, I've been in this business, what, approaching soon to about 35 years, maybe a little more. And I've been on the cover of Time magazine. I received an honorary degree from this august institution. And they ever picked up the phone? No. It was seeing a picture of me with Denzel Washington. No, okay, now this is not about, it was a lot of love. But I'm saying, that's American patrimony. It is not real until it's there, right? Now maybe this, once again, you the people don't have to be seduced and we don't have to sell you tickets, right? You just know what you're gonna do. But I'm thinking for people of which I come from, working class people, we were potato pickers. That is, I accept it or not, that is how they set their values. And that's what's been fed to them. Marketing. Celebrity. Celebrity right now is the thing that is ruling Broadway. You've got, it's got to be a property that everyone has seen in the movies or on television, and then you make a show about it. And then it would really be useful if you had somebody who was really famous from the movies or television in it. Well, that's American patrimony.
Yeah.
It is, whether we like it or not. It's what we will hand to the next generation.
And so how to explain Fela, in a way, as something that is doing well on Broadway? I mean, that seems like an amazing thing. I was thinking about...
I think it is.
Right? I mean,
yes,
the story
really
of Fela himself, his politics, actually, it was his mother. Oh my goodness, as the, sort of animating force and patron saint with that big, gorgeous picture of her and the way that you had her move across, in the back of the stage. That was even the deeper story because I didn't know anything about her. I knew about Fela, but not about her. And of course, also, she's the one who first sacrificed the politics of the time. So, here's a real, a tough political tale. Here are songs that went around the world and were anthems for people in struggle all around the world.
It's true.
And also in the dance, here are black bodies on stage, not hoochie-coochieing, but doing something else altogether that is, it seemed to me, but I want to hear what you say about making the dance, both, out of so much West African dance vocabulary in ways that it probably had to be, but also...
And it could not have been arranged in the way it is without a person who came from the postmodern American dance vocabulary that I have. Yeah.
But that's the thing, and I was sort of watching, and I felt there was one gesture that I loved. It was sort of up and then down on the knee in the beginning.
Oh yeah, that's actually a kind of in the shrine, in the Yoruba shrine. That is a way of doing a salute.
Oh,
okay. You know that the reason his mother's picture is there because Fela literally he made his own shrine in his nightclub. As you know, Fela's shrine was at once a showcase for his music. It was also a bully pulpit for his political education program. He had tables with pamphlets and books because he felt the young people were not getting the truth. This whole of what it meant to be an authentic African. And he also saw it as a Yoruba shrine, which he was chief priest. So there's a lot that he was, those evenings there were a lot. And that gesture they do is actually how you acknowledge the gods. And his mother, he made one of the deities. He made her the goddess of rain. Well, he said she came to him in a dream as a goddess of rain. So that he would always hear her then when it rained. So that is what that was. Yes, it was. I was very flattered when Toni Morrison came to the off-Broadway production, and Toni, I'm not quite sure what she thought about Fela. She's a personal friend of Wole Soyinka, who is Fela's cousin, as you know, and I think that she probably had the attitude that many of the more serious Nigerians had about politics and activism. that Fela was, first and foremost, a showman and just playing around and not serious, you know. But she came and she actually, I think partially it was because of the brilliance of Sarah Ngoja's characterization, but she said, you know, I really enjoyed this and I learned something. Now, for Tony to say that, it's a pretty learned woman. And I was really moved by that. And if the show can do all that and you get to shake your hips. Tony was the first one that said to me, about 6 years ago, 10 years ago, when we were going to Brazil. And she just come back from Brazil and she was saying, you know, you have to, the people, and she went on, she said, they have this profound sexuality. She said, not this silly acting out that we do. She said, that's profound sexuality. Now, you know, and there was, you know, you've been to Salvador de Bahia.
Yes.
You know that dance they do, which actually is a version of it that Fela's women do, and it's really rude, but it transcends rude. I've seen like beautiful young, tender young 14, 15-year-old girls on the beach, you know, put the beer bottle down here, and then you just like go down like this. Your mom is over here, your dad's over there, and you're like, you're going down. Well, okay. Well, Africanist, right? So when we tried, you know what I'm talking about, right?
Tensions.
Yeah. So when we were putting Fela together and we were trying to find, just as we decorated the walls in a way that might suggest the shrine, just as Fela speaks in a certain kind of jargon or pidgin English or Yoruba, just as the slogans of the 1960s are embedded on him, you know, I'm sure that's where these things came from.
Yeah.
This, you know. Well, we were looking for dance movement that might suggest what the Calcutta experience was like. Calcutta means rascal. It's also the name of a prison, but he, a man who was arrested 200 times, decided to call his compound the Independent Republic of Calcutta, just to like give the bird to the powers that be, you know. And of course, we know what happened. He was stormed. But, so those women, the women moved like that in his show. They really did move that way. And that is, because he was looking for what he called an authentic African experience. There's problems with Fela, you know, if he was an authentic African, he's always the chief.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
nobody else is the chief around him, but he's the chief, yeah. And he dressed in lame and he dressed like a rock star and all. But he was an authentic African man. And this is how authentic African women in his imagination behaved, even though his mother was the daughter of a Protestant minister, highly educated, was given the Lenin Prize in 1975, I believe it was 75. And
African woman to set foot in China?
Can you believe it?
That was something.
First African woman to have a driver's license, you know?
Whoa.
Yes, so, I know, but there's Unalayo, and then there's his queens.
Yeah.
Doing the roll down and so on. Well, yeah.
And what if it is not contradictory?
Yes.
Then
Sort of.
that's what's interesting in the mashup, right?
Yeah, contradictions. Yeah, contradictions.
I saw, and I'm checking our time, we're good, that masterclass show on
HBO.
On HBO, so in this show, if you've seen it, a master artist, I suppose the young people apply or compete to?
They're all chosen through a program that does a nationwide search for people in all sorts of categories: music, classical music, jazz, dance, classical dance, modern dance, hip hop, not hip hop, but ethnic dance, acting, directing, choreography. And so they are brought together every year for a kind of a camp. And then some of them are chosen, and now they have this, they send, I was chosen as a master artist. I was given like several videotapes, DVDs, and I could choose who I wanted to work with. And then I give them an assignment. And that's what it was.
And in 3 days, they make a piece, and you mentored them.
God.
And it was...
I harassed them is what it was.
But some of the things that I took from that, and I loved it, and I loved seeing you in that teacherly mode. You know, don't make movement because it looks cute on you, right? You know, choose the unusual path.
Yes.
Do the harder thing. I thought of what you were just saying, you know, do something and then do something to it.
Yes.
All of that was the kind of thing that you were giving these young people, and it was transformative to them in a short period of time.
And that's why I respect so much artists like yourself, or people who have made their career education. Because I think to myself, how dare you try to bring the gift of the gods through your mouth and put it into someone's soul. You can't teach somebody how to be inspired. But we try. We give them basic language, right? We give them something. But there is something that it feels weird to be actually saying, this is what you should do. You know Doris Humphrey, right? There's Martha. In the beginning was Ruth St. Dennis. Ruth St. Dennis begat Martha and Doris and so on. Well, anyways, Doris Humphrey, the book, anyone that dancing historians here, what's it called? The Art of Making Dances?
That's what it's called, yeah.
Can you believe that she actually said, you know, this is a good line.
Yeah.
That is a bad line. She'd never seen Cunningham, I guess, right?
I've never seen a whole lot.
Yeah. But that was her aesthetic.
Yeah.
You know, this is good. This works. That does not work. Now, when you're teaching people who are supposed to be trawling their subconscious and what have you, you have to be very careful what you tell them, how you critique. I'm a tough ass on my bad days. I'm a lollipop on my good days. But the tough ass is one that says, you know, like, you know, slap them around, you know, because that's what, as my mother used to say, I don't beat you, the law will. Right? I don't beat you, the law will. Well, that's an Africanist or African American point of view, right? So be real hard on them, you know, because they're going to be. Artists are by nature in a state of denial. They're self-involved. They're indulgent. These are all the assumptions. We love them, but there's a lot of dross. And they've got to be put in the sacred fire early on. You know, can you imagine? Knowing my biography, I'm saying all this, but you know, it's amazing how conservatizing middle age is. But this is what I was trying to just give it to them, Bill. Boom, come at it like that, you know. And they can tell you, you know, buddy, you know, they don't have to take anything. Matter of fact, that's even part of the description. Even. I don't know, you people, a room full of people who teach, right? And I'm sure you've had young students in there who are just dying to tell you, I don't care what you think. Even though your job is, and they're paying top dollar to be here listening to you tell them such and such. But I'm not. I waltz in, you know. And I waltz in, and I don't know if my method is not. It's not there to be sustained over months and months and months of.
Yeah, which is right.
Yeah, and it's coming in and doing what I do. So that's what was special about that master class.
But I liked how you put them on the grid, on the floor. He made a grid on the floor, and they said, I feel confined. But then soon what they found is, and we began to talk about form, and the ways in which, you know, confinement or a suggestion of form, in fact, can be something that gives you tremendous freedom.
Yeah, it's the first thing you have to learn almost, don't you?
I think so.
About kind of restrictions.
Yep.
Yeah, it's true. And that, because I was making a piece that they were going to see, I had made a piece called Chapel Chapter that was actually made in the exact same floor grid, and I had learned a lot by working in that floor grid, which I think was the brainchild of Bjorn Ameland and myself in conversation. So I imposed that upon them, almost like an opinion, but different, because they just had to, okay, deal with it. You don't like it? Well, then deal with it.
Yeah.
You know, deal with let that be part of what makes you make the movement you make. 3 days is really too short.
Yes.
It's really too short, but that's what I did.
But I wondered if, I mean, there weren't shows like Masterclass. One of us was coming along, and I don't get the sense that you had that kind of apprenticeship.
No.
So I wonder what there is to be said for autodidacticism and self-making. Perhaps with Arnie, the kind of, learning together and collaborating intensely over time as a form of, not mentorship, but giving you what you get from mentorship.
Well, that's a really rich and meaty question. I do know the other night, Angela Lansbury, a very wonderful lady, she said to that Tony audience that, speaking to young people, she said, you should learn everything you possibly can. Because the world that you're going into, I'm paraphrasing her poorly, you will need every bit of information. Now, do I wish that when I was at Wayland Central School, and Miss Charlotte McLaughlin, with her sensible shoes and, always, tailleur, but very conservative lady, very high standards. She had no truck with the Beatles and stuff like that, which we made her, she was like totally out of it. She was insisting that we sing 8-10-part harmony, She didn't want us to do show tunes. That happened later, after I left. So, do I wish I had really taken it more seriously and not been spoofing her behind her back and making me laugh at the joke? We called her Scarlet Charlotte. All of this, how mean kids can be, Do I wish? Yes, I do, big time. I really do. So, yeah, I was 17 at Woodstock, right? Now, that was a learning experience. But the same kind of energy I wish that I put into Woodstock, I wish it was a bit like Bjorn's father, Aaron, who took Bjorn to museums at a very young age and showed him what a brush stroke was. Estella and Gus were not taking me to the museum. Estella and Gus, I don't think had ever seen anything other than maybe vaudeville shows and stuff like that. Maybe vaudeville. They'd never been to a dance concert or a play. We watched television. So do I wish that I'd had that? Yes, but that's kind of a sin, isn't it? I wish my life were different, But I do see there is value in pedagogy. Yeah. There is value in adults around you taking the responsibility to say, no, I want you, even if you're only there for half the program, you are going to listen to Beethoven tonight. Just take the responsibility of the kids being angry and what have you. I think that's very, very important. Yeah.
But then, of course, discipline, which on some days I feel is 99.9% of making any art. Not every day, but, without it, there is no art. Well, that can come from a lot of places, too.
Yes, it can it? Yeah.
Perhaps in thinking about your parents and, picking potatoes and just the discipline of staying with that which is not always exalted, but you...
In this new piece that we made, I resuscitated a chant that I did back in the early 80s, and there is, go, 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 gotta get up, gotta get up, gotta get up, get going, gotta get up, get going, get in the car, get in the car, get in the car, got to go to work, got to go to work. So Shayla, as she can say it 4 or 5 times, any way she wants. And I told her, I want you to take me on a journey of, you gotta go to work.
Yeah.
So, yes, you gotta go to work, or you gotta go to work, or we gotta go to work, or I have to go to work, And I wanted her to just sing it to me in all the different ways that she could imagine what that simple discipline was, which my parents, every day, they hit that floor, and they had to get out there picking potatoes at 12 cents a bag, or tying grapes, or what have you, And now I understand the days that I just do not want to be bothered with, I've got to go into a studio or an interview or what have you, and I think about my dad, my mother, and you got to get out and do this, and this is what they knew. These people could smell slavery. All of them, so.
Yeah. I'm going to ask you one more thing, and then we'll open it up to questions. But this came to me in a dream, actually, in thinking about today. And I thought, the phrase came to me, artists go to the shores of death. that that's in some way what we're trying to do, and that that's an aspiration, even if it's not literal. And that seemed to me to say something that describes a lot of your work, actually. The ability to go to the shores of death, the ability.
Do you mean it in the way that when I was invited to share a program with Allen Ginsberg a week before he died, it was Robert Turman called it the Art of Dying Conference. Now, any Buddhist in the room? You know this term, the art of dying? That every day should be a rehearsal for one's death? Now, it sounds morbid, but I don't know enough about it. I don't think it is. I think it's a set of exercises about being absolutely aware so that when the time comes when you are facing that next big transformation, which can look like oblivion, that you will already have had some familiarity with it. Now, if that's what you mean, on the shores of death, because like everybody else, my libido has been driving me. I've been in love with my taste, hedonism, my ambition. And in the last couple of years, I've been fighting depression, and depression sometimes presents the magic exit of oblivion. I could always end this, which is, I don't think I'm that strong. But you can, well, some of us are. Some of us do it. And it's your right to do it. But I think, so you're talking about the shores of death.
Well, yeah. I think what I mean is, that's interesting, but being able also to literally, so Fela, for example, a political commitment and also a creative drive, right? That lets him choose a life where he gets arrested 200 times, where his mother is thrown out the window, where he is up against, to me that's the shore of death, right? Where he's up against it and he's let art be the vehicle that takes him there.
Yes.
Or in thinking about Still Here, and the whole, and I think that being related to a lot of the other works, but to talk about that perhaps, bringing in all of these people to talk about near death, facing death, losing human beings, mortality, and that out of that comes a living thing.
Right.
That's sort of the zone.
No, I agree with you. Now, talking about Still Here, which was, I'm sure maybe you do know, it's a piece that I made back in 1994, and it was done through a series of workshops with people who were or had been dealing with a life-threatening illness. They did a workshop with me about where they drew their lives as an abstraction. We walked it. Everything was videotaped. They were asked a series of questions. What do you love? What do you fear? Do you have information that people who are not dealing with this condition have? And people would often hesitate, and they'd say, yes, we think we do, but we wish that people did not have to go through what we have to go through to have it. So they in a lot of their testimonies, what was your moment of the diagnosis? What do you see as the end of your life? And everything was being recorded, written down, and then it was given to two composers, Phil Genfrizel and Vernon Reed, to make music out of it, to which we would dance. So that's what Still Here was. Now, around that time, or before that time, Arnie Zane had already died in '88. This piece was actually begun in '90. The idea was that, as Frida Rosen, who was my social therapist, used to say, that she felt she was not into traditional therapy. She thought, yeah, all that stuff about your parents and all is a good story, but it doesn't tell you how to live in the world. And this is the challenge of social therapy. That oftentimes, if a white man and a black man are in a relationship and there's tension, that tension is not so much in your problems with sexual problems or whatever. It might be the fact that the black man feels constantly inferior because of the traditional assumption that black people do not handle numbers or do not think in the way. So you and this person may be even in love with each other, But those things are going to come into your relationship. So this is one of the premises. I mean, it's imperfect, but there was something to it. This idea about socializing your problems, socialize them. So what was the problem? I felt that even though this is not a piece about AIDS, and actually the piece was started when Sonny Dupree, a charming lady from Cambridge, came up to me. She was a breast cancer activist. And she said, you should make a piece about breast cancer. I said, breast cancer? What? I'm a man, I'm a gay man, you know. She said, and that's why you should do it. Well, okay, so it didn't even start out on HIV or anything like that. But it made me realize that I was, like many other people, really anxious about the idea of plague, death. I was anxious. So I said, okay, I will socialize my anxiety, my question. And I will go to people who have really, quote, they're not visiting the shores of death, but maybe live there every day. Imagine being a woman that has a 12-year-old daughter who has seen you laying in your blood after chemotherapy, and you have to talk to that child about what's going on. Now, these were people there. And now I said, now put your experience in a gesture, right? Her name was Lisa, a French woman. Every once in a while, her daughter, who is now a grown woman, I think maybe has children, choreographer, will come to me and tell me about the time when her mother's now died, about that experience. So socializing my anxiety, socializing my questions about that thing, which is mortality. That's what Still Here was for me. Now, maybe, I don't know, D-Man, maybe also was about triumph, just what I call a sweaty epiphany in the face of death, you know. But it's really, death is almost too easy, isn't it? It's hard to do the other part. It's hard to do the other part. Anybody see Babies? I loved it. I loved it. I can't believe a friend of mine said, I can't believe you saw that. What do you mean? I saw that. I come from a family of 12. My sisters, bless them, each one of them had a child or two by the time they were 18. Who do you think was changing the diapers when they were out on dates? Who? You know? Yeah. So that film is to me about the other part.
Yes.
And I was visiting the shores of death. I want to know how to do that. Yeah, I want to know how to do healthy sexuality as opposed to obsession. I want to know how to do something the conversation is doing, that if we were trying to do it in a work collaborating, how would we talk about the excitement of getting to know each other and so on.
Yeah. Well, I should let some other people
Yes. That's a rush for the bathrooms, or we'll I guess we can have a little bit more of it.
Yes, we have quite a few questions for your questions and comments.
Okay, this is a comment. I'm glad to see you.
Hello.
I saw you in Durham at Duke University when you brought Still Here there. And I want you to know that it was a healing balm for a whole community of people, and I've followed your career since then. And I just wish the best for you, and the best is happening, and continue with
A lot of good stuff is happening.
in your,
Yes, thank you very much.
your healing art, which it is for some people.
Yeah, that's a big one, isn't it? Yeah.
Hi, so still on the subject of Still Here. Obviously, as many of us will know, there was a huge controversy when Arlene Croce went and refused to review it.
Arlene who?
I can't pronounce things here.
For the longest time, it was She Who Shall Not Be Named.
She shall not be named. I'm not even gonna ask you what you thought about her response, but I wondered if there was anything positive for you that came out of the discourse? Because there was so much then that was written about Still Here and about criticism. And generally, if there was anything that was written in your defense that you particularly liked, but more broadly, what criticism has meant to you? Do you care about it? Do you read reviews? And is there, in that...
Well, I get it.
Okay,
So the glib answer is, all that does not kill me makes me strong. Right? We could stop there. The other one is back to this question of being the middle-aged man who is now telling young people that they should be tougher and so on. Well, I do think that a lot of things that have been very, very hurtful to me, if I can weather it, and then picking it up maybe 2 years later and reading it, it's oftentimes revelatory. First, it was maybe not as life-threatening as I thought, maybe not as personal, maybe it was, and maybe I might agree with even certain things that I don't know about that article, but there was, I think, when I look back at Miss Croce now, I can almost feel for her in how she saw her situation, that she felt that the traditional role of the critic was being undermined because of political correctness, because of we live in an era that's not able to look directly at problems and call things as what they are, because we have to use euphemistic language and so on and so forth. And she was trying to be tough-minded. Tough-mindedness is not a terrible thing. I think that there's a lot of denial that she had. I don't think she really knew prejudices she had. I don't think she knew her own anxieties. And I think she was missing an opportunity for me and those people in those workshops to share something with her. So that's I'm in a good mood right now. She's done her job well, right? Right. So, but that is, I think that's what I would always say. Those artists in the room, when some tough things come at you like that, and sometimes it's nasty. It is bitchy. Don't make them gods and goddesses in the sense that they are magisterial and their opinion is above reproach. They're only, I don't have to quote Derrida, right, to understand that they're coming from a location. So at once, acknowledge that they're just people coming from a location. That's all. The other one is that you also maybe cannot see what other people can see. So you might want to find a way to be able to have that perspective. That's what I have learned. I don't read. If I'm going to go see a movie, I don't read the reviews. If I'm going to go see anything, I know I'm going to go see it. I don't read the reviews before I go. I think that I trust enough my own faculties and ability to associate, free associate, what have you. Then later, I'm curious to see what other people said, but not before. Nobody has to do that thinking for me. Yeah.
But how do you know to go there or not go there without having somebody try?
Well, no. An actor, a dancer, a musician who is doing work there. I'm curious about them. Maybe a friend of mine has even said, you might be interested in that. You might be interested. Maybe professionally, I would just want to, there's a lot of things I don't see on Broadway. I should get out more. I should see more things, I'm working so much, I don't see it. Well, isn't that enough reason to go? Am I missing something? I mean, I haven't seen the Prince of Persia. But it's the sort of movie that my friend and I like. We go to them, it's an escapist movie. I don't care. It's probably will have great special effects. I go see it. If it was Polanski's new film, what was it called? Pardon? Yes. I'm interested in him. When I went to see the film, I was disappointed in it. Didn't really like it. Loved a film called The Prophet, which was something that was playing in the art cinema across the river from my house, and we went to see all this trash as me trying to escape from working on Fela, going to see trash to turn off. And that film, I was curious about that film, and finally did see it on the plane, and it was a revelation. It was, but it was just timing. I looked at it. No, I don't need them to tell me I should or should not go see it. I don't. Although, when I do something and somebody raves about it, I want you to read what they said and buy tickets. Not very consistent, is it? Yeah? Yeah.
Hi, as someone who was 17 at Woodstock, and
Say that again, please.
as someone who was 17 at Woodstock and works now with young people, I'm wondering if you can comment on the difference in making art when you were young and.
Now, you realize I was a 17-year-old. I was not, I was in drama club. Does that count? Yeah. Let's say when I was 19 or 20, and Arnie Zane and I had just come back from Amsterdam. We were living together, trying to make a life together. He's doing photography. I'm trying to, I say I want to dance. I'm trying to find classes, trying to find a way of dancing. Arnie Zane never suffered my just idle dreaming, because he was a doer. He was a doer. That guy would be up first thing in the morning making lists. He had plans, you know. I was part of his plan. You know, he loved me very much, and he wanted the best for me. But he'd say, you know, okay, you want to dance? Well, go take dance classes. You know, go do it. You know, I think I come from, I don't want to speak, I've already besmirched my family a bit today, but I think there's a lot of chronic underachievement because of people dreaming about doing. And this kind of crippling feeling of, what if I fail? What if? I'll just lay here and imagine the good parts, and then if I try it, and if I go try something and someone says something negative, then every bit of negativity comes down, and you're like doing all these things, retreating into drugs, into sex, into violence, what have you, because you're so ashamed, you know. Well, get up, go do it. That was a very important thing, and I think that's very important for young people right now. You know, you guys are burdened as well with superstardom, supermodel, super mogul, super, you know, particularly young black people. Isn't it amazing? It's not enough just to be a successful artist. In fact, you got to be a mogul, you know? You can't sell like, you know, you can't sell like, you know, 100,000 records or 500,000. You got to go platinum, you know? You know what I'm saying? So that is a burden, I think. That is a real burden. I mean, what is success? That's the thing I love to ask people who are beginning. I said, you know, you might want to have a little time with yourself. Make a list or whatever. What do you consider success? What would that be? A house in Malibu? You know, trophy boyfriend, trophy girlfriend, plane, being on the cover of Time magazine, winning a Tony Award. What's success? Is that fair to ask a young person? I don't know, but I think they should be asked. I think they should think about it. Start thinking about it. You know, you're the only one who's going to be able to answer it for yourself. The world will help you in the worst possible way. Usually it looks like a foot in your ass. But the world is helping you, you know, like that, you know? Yeah, it's true. Is that all right?
Yeah, thank you.
What do you do?
An educator, I'm a teacher.
How young?
I'm hoping to work with middle school students.
I see. How old is that?
Yeah. Middle school would be 11 to 13.
Oh, they can be nice.
Or,
You know, you turn it up a little bit more and you'll know what I'm talking about, right? Yeah. Ooh, 14, 15-year-olds? Lord have mercy. Yeah.
Hi. This lecture was titled, as I recall, African American Art in the Age of Obama.
Have we been doing a lecture?
this talk, excuse me.
We're having a conversation.
I'm wondering if you could speak to that. I'm just curious, do you see any a different trajectory in art since Obama was elected? Do you see different
What, 14 whole months ago, right? 15 months ago. Yeah, it's a question that Europeans love to ask, you know. You know, isn't it amazing you're making a piece about Abraham Lincoln and now you have a black man as president? You know? Yeah, so what do you want me to say? Yeah, well, Mr. Obama, I am in his corner. It took me a while to get there, but I am in his corner, and I'm not proud of this, but I think I care more about his day-to-day than I have ever about any president. it's a kind of transference that's going on, and I identify strongly with him. When he's criticized, I immediately feel it. That does not make me exactly objective, is what I'm trying to say. I don't know. He's a good writer. I wish that well, I don't wish. Did you read his book, his book, Dreams from My Father? There's a strange moment there. One of the things I'm thinking about for our next project is maybe a stage version of Black Orpheus. You know that work? Do you know his book, his reference to it in his book?
Yes.
How he and his sister were sort of like, their mother is sitting there weeping and watching it, and they were like sort of feeling a little embarrassed and kind of not sorry for her or whatever. She was like going down memory lane, Imagine this young white woman having an affair with a handsome black man years ago, and she and the man have broken apart, but that would have been the film they probably would have seen when they were dating, But that's what he saw. In other words, the Yoruba references, the Greek and classical references woven in, the feeling the feelings that are hard to say that the film is talking about. What is loss? What is love? All of those things. I know he has two daughters now. I don't know. Is he a poet? I know he's a good writer, but is he a poet? You know what? In everything I say, I don't want him to have a beer with me. I don't want him to be my best friend. I want him to be professorial from here to tomorrow. I want him to be cool. No, I don't need him to show more emotion because of what's going on in the Gulf of Mexico. I just want him to be the example. That's the example I want my kids, your kids, to look at, Now, I also have the Abraham Lincoln piece, because I'm also thinking that it's lining up just like Mr. Lincoln. Now, Mr. Lincoln was given a crushing war. Mr. Lincoln, according to Elizabeth Keckley, she, you all know who she was, a dressmaker for Mary Todd, who had been the dressmaker of Miss Jefferson Davis. You believe that? Anyways, she was a dressmaker to the stars, black woman, free woman. But anyways, she reports that Lincoln would be bent over with anxiety like that in the morning, right? You imagine that. And then, lo and behold, just as it's beginning to fall, right? You know how that is, that boom, in a great novel, no one saw it coming, boom, he's killed. Suddenly he belongs to the ages or the angels, depends on who you believe. Well, I don't want Mr. Obama to go that way. But I do think that he is set up for greatness because there's so much, excuse the term, so much shit that he inherited. He's got the stuff here, Now, what gave Mr. Lincoln this stuff? Here? I don't know. But I think I'm holding that piece out for Mr. Obama. Now, the arts? I don't know. His wife came to American Ballet Theater soon after the inauguration. She made an important speech. I think it was an important speech. It seemed rudimentary to me that she wants to make this experience available to every school child across the nation. Wasn't Lady Bird Johnson saying something like that? I mean, we have to say it again and again. It's nothing against Michelle. She was saying what she had to say, like eat your vegetables. But we know that, no? We know that, but they have to say it, because of this culture of complaint, Robert Hughes, and this sort of this insidious dumbing down that's been done to us over the last 60 years. Yeah, I wish he was, instead of playing so much basketball, I wish he was writing a great novel, or heaven forbid, trying to study modern dance. Well, wouldn't that be amazing? Yes, can you imagine him trying to study modern dance? Would I wish that personally? I don't see that happening. And I am a little put off by the not one, not two, not three, not four, but 5 religious advisors. 5. All Protestants. And even though he's talking a different tune now, but marriage is between a man and a woman, he's allowed. Yeah, I got his back, but we're very different. We're very different. Now, that's going to cost you, right? My insightful political analysis, you got to give me something now a little bit more, bring me back. Who's this pretty lady up there with her hand on her? Yeah, it's you. 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 No, the young black woman who looked right at me right now with the hoop earrings. Yes, you. How did you happen to be here today? Why did you come? That's you. No, 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 right here.
There.
You, yes. Now I'm flattered. It wasn't a class assignment?
Well, kinda, yeah.
I asked for that one, right? Well, I'm glad you're doing your work. Yeah, yeah. Yes, 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 yes. Yes, sir. Hello, hello.
Thank you. Bill, Mr. Jones.
Hello. You can call me. What's your name?
David Greer.
I'm sorry?
David Greer.
Dave Greer.
David Greer.
Oh, good to meet you.
And you're from?
I was born in Bunnell, Florida in 1952, about 70 miles south of Jacksonville.
Okay.
And I was raised from 1955 until I left in the 1970s in Wayland, New York, about 43 miles from Rochester, New York.
Okay. Well, I didn't do well enough research. I'm originally from Kentucky, so when you started talking about picking potatoes, I was wondering where you were coming from. But again, I had a quick statement and a question. I saw Fela not once but twice.
Yeah. Did you do the clock?
Excuse me?
Did you do the clock?
I did the clock.
All right.
Clock?
Yeah.
You know I did the clock. Yes, I
I'm also, I live in Hartford, Connecticut. I'm on the producer team for the new Candor and Ebb musical, Scottsboro Boys.
Yes, yeah.
And so I hope you go see it.
Yes, I will. I definitely
Very good
will.
patrimony.
Yeah, yeah.
And so my question is, you know, plays, musicals, movies, you only have a certain amount of time, 2.5 hours to tell a story.
Mm-hmm.
What was the most important truth in the Fela story that you had to leave out of the show?
Yeah. Oh, that I had to leave out. Well, that's a producer's question, isn't it? Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, you know, one day I got in the elevator and I heard my lead, Sar, who knows this material, and he was singing, "My people, every day you see them inside bus shopping and smiling, 99 standing, 99 standing, 39 sitting." Well, I said, "What are you singing?" And he was singing a very famous Fela tune called "Shuffling and Smiling," usually with lots of orchestration, but he was singing it a cappella. And when I heard him singing it a cappella, I heard Fela's poetry. I heard his language. I heard his politics. It was kind of beautiful, uncut. And I had a moment that I had off-Broadway version where everything stops. And I said, Fela is never not on in our show. He's always coming at you like this. Now we want a moment where he's literally going to do this and he's going to be introspective. Now I know the man must have been, but we don't see it in his public interviews. So there was a moment where I wanted Sar to allow himself to be looked at. And I wanted him to sing this a cappella. Of course, there's a rule of his wives behind him all sitting in there very beautifully dressed. And I wanted people to hear what I heard. First of all, hear pidgin English, because we translate everything. Hear the turn of phrases, shuffling and smiling. I wanted them to know that he was a poet. I wanted him to be seen in a kind of a human moment of asking questions about evil. And we had to cut that. Because, quote, it was making the second act drag. You know, that's how it's done, right? You know, I could have stomped my feet and insisted on it. And then we saw, everybody says, including New York Times, you got to lose 15 or 20 minutes off that show. You've got to lose it. So why am I doing this? Because I want to succeed, correct? Okay, if you want to succeed, they're saying one way is to make it leaner and meaner and tighter. So what can you lose? Let's lose shuffling and smiling. And we did. And the show is still a good show. Or how many ways Thaler was beaten. He used to tell hilarious stories. My father had 3 ways of beating. And that was, we were going to make a whole shtick out of that. Because, our show now, there's a lot about his abuse at the hands of the military regime. But I'm talking about just grew up in a household that believed in corporal punishment. One way was stick out your butt, other one is hunch your back, and we were acting it out with this stick and all. I thought that was very important to a man that is, do we bring upon our own destiny? I mean, maybe if you believe in karma and all, maybe he wished himself to be beaten, broken. His whole life he'd been so stubborn, twice born stubborn, his mother said, that his father had to beat him. And now there's a sort of beating that he's taking at the hands of the military regime. I thought that would be interesting. It was too esoteric, as I was told. The line of a musical cannot take those sort of side trips into psychology. A lot of things were said. A call was made. We didn't need it, So that's the sort of thing. Good question. You sound like a good producer. Yeah. First time? There's always a first time, isn't there? Yeah. Or so they tell me. How are we doing, folks? You getting tired of us yet? Yeah.
I think we have time for one more question.
There's a gentleman there.
This is a question for both of you, actually. Throughout your talk, you talked about more than just poetry and dance. You talked about many forms of art. I was wondering which particular art form besides your own that you use that inspires you the most when you're creating your art form.
I go first.
Well, I'm not going to just pick one, maybe. I'm interested in the domestic arts, cooking in particular, and actually probably related to dance, which was what I first studied and fantasized about. That was not to be, but I learned so much about form and order and freedom that has everything to do with making poems. And I think in cooking as well, watching other people do it, talking about it, thinking about it, spending time talking to people who come out of food cultures, who sit at the table and talk about what the next meal is going to be. Making something beautiful that then disappears. Making something beautiful that has a function. Making something perfect even when it's simple. From that, I've learned a lot about what I aspire to in making poems, even if they end up looking a whole lot of different ways.
That's beautiful. Yeah. For me, a few years ago, I would have said that I'm an art groupie. My friends are primarily in the visual arts, or they were visual artists. Our idea of a day off is to go to the galleries, go to the Met, what have you. But also, that's very important, very important. It can be the death of choreography, of course, if you're seeing everything as still pictures, which I have, and I still do, actually, in a way. Then there is reading. Reading. Right now, Bjorn is reading the second time, but you know the Chinese classic, The Dream of the Red Chamber? Right, it's very important. If you're interested at all in China, in the structure before the 20th century, you can sort of see the imperial house and its decline, and this whole, and it's like a big soap opera. but really beautifully told. And he's reading it in French, I'm reading it in English. We read it out loud to each other. That kind of pacing, repetition, character, location, place is very, very important to me. Is it directly reflected in my choreography? Probably not, but it does. I do have a satisfying sense of the shape of a scene. And then there are movies, a lot of movies. Arnie Zane and I, it was a revelation when we worked with Ken Jacobs, avant-garde filmmaker, and his analytical film projector, in which he would do a class where we would take apart things like Wizard of Oz. And he would say, don't be seduced! And he would say, now look at this scene. This is what's going on. And he'd like go through frame by frame by frame. So all the, quote, magic of cinema, it's just 24 frames going in front of a light every second gives an illusion. That was so inspirational to us as choreographers, you know. So we began to think about and this is what you're doing. But now an audience, to get them to look at it, you know, it's not a machine. And because people are able to do it, suddenly their appreciation of what movement is and their perception of movement was raised higher. So definitely movies and definitely reading and the visual arts. It's,
And so, if I could just say, so thank you to all of you for coming.
Thank you very much.
And thank you not only for your work, but for coming to see us in New Haven and for this beautiful conversation.
Thank you very much.